I want to go back now to the issue of pro-Palestinian and anti-Israeli activism and protest and the anti-Semitism that comes with it. Sydney University has caved into months of activism by protesters who have chanted Intifada and from the river to the sea. The uni encampment has received outside support from radical socialist organisations and the hardline Islamist organisation Hizb ut-Tahrir, a group banned in some Muslim countries and just banned as a terror group in the UK. The coalition keeps pushing Labor to list Hizb ut-Tahrir as a terrorist organisation, but so far their pleas have fallen on deaf ears. Let me bring in Liberal MP Julian Leeser. Thanks for joining us, Julian. What evidence is there to link Hizb ut-Tahrir, who are openly Islamist, but so they sort of support the aims of other radical groups that want to see an Islamic caliphate across the world, but they say that they reject violent means. Is there any evidence to suggest they do support violent means in Australia?
Well, it was Hizb ut-Tahrir that organised protests here that praised the work of the 7th of October Terrorist Act and praised Hamas. And they did that in this country, and they've done it around the world. And it was that praise that caused the British to list Hizb ut-Tahrir as a terrorist organisation, because under their listing regime, which is very similar to our own listing regime, praise of a violent terrorist act that might cause the commission of a violent terrorist act in this country is a reason to list the organisation. I think when Britain lists terrorist organisations, we in Australia should pay very close attention. I sat on the Joint Committee on Intelligence and Security for 6 years. When Britain listed Hezbollah in its entirety and Hamas, we on the Australian Committee took close note of that, and it was a factor that we considered in relation to the listing of those organisations. I think the fact Britain has listed Hizb ut-Tahrir is a reason to list it. It's just extraordinary, as you say, Chris, that this organisation, it is an organisation that's listed, as you say, not just in Britain but in Germany and in many Muslim countries, is now having an outsized influence over Sydney University, effectively as a result of the deal that Sydney University did with them, a complete capitulation where they said, we will let you run the ruler over any of our defence contracts and any of the defence investments and research. You have to think about where Australia is at the moment. AUKUS is the biggest game in town. We want our best and brightest minds dealing with this. Sydney Uni is effectively dealing themselves out of having anything to do with AUKUS. Now, this is the reason, Chris, why I've been putting up repeatedly my bill for a judicial inquiry into anti-Semitism on campus. Every day we are hearing new and more disturbing revelations coming from the education sector, and I'm getting more and more university administrators and academics contacting me and telling me I'm on the right path. It's time for the government to act and take this issue seriously instead of voting down my bill each and every week.
So many strong points there, Julian, so many worth picking up on. For instance, I think this idea that hate speech, that celebration of the slaughter of Israeli citizens does amount to hate speech. And we know that some of the people who are doing that, some of the sheikhs doing that, have links to Hizb ut-Tahrir. So the fact that our authorities haven't tried to prosecute people for hate speech and haven't looked at this organisation does confound me. And also, you make the very strong point about our intelligence relationships. We're in the Five Eyes intelligence relationship as well as our normal defence alliances. But it means that when Canada, the USA, the UK and even New Zealand, when those countries are looking at groups as terror organisations, we ought to, our rule ought to be working in unison with them rather than to have a different interpretation. And that's why if this is a terror group in UK eyes, we ought to be looking at this organisation very, very carefully here, if for no other reason than we want to supply the UK with adequate intelligence.
Well, that's right, Chris. I think we should always make our own decisions based on our own laws, but we should pay very close attention to what the Five Eyes countries do. On another issue in relation to the listing of terror organisations, Canada recently listed the IRGC, the Iranian Secret Police. And we've been calling as the coalition for the government to consider the listing of that organisation here. Again, that's another occasion where I want to see the government take strong action. But again and again, we see weakness from this government. We see no direction from them to our security agencies or our authorities, our law enforcement authorities, to take the issue of the growth of anti-Semitism and these terrorist organisations seriously.